Hi church, happy Friday and welcome to today's digital devotion. So Pastor Jacob and I were reflecting on some different poets and writers that we've been talking about that have come across our desk recently, and one of those is Jane Kenyon. For those of you who aren't familiar with Jane, she is a poet from Ann Arbor, Michigan, and her history and her background is that her grandmother was a fundamentalist Methodist, and that really influenced Jane as a young person and scared her away from religion. She left Christianity altogether, but then came back to it and found her way back to Christianity as an adult. She obviously became a poet, and she has this great quote that I wanted to share. She said, "My spiritual life is so much a part of my intellectual life and my feeling life that it's really become impossible for me to keep it out of my work." And when I read that quote to Jacob, he said, "Oh, that makes me think of you and your background, which is in creative writing and English literature, and how you came to seminary and you came into church leadership through this intellectual curiosity and sort of delving into how my writing was becoming all about faith and spiritual exploration." And so that's sort of how I made my way.
Yeah, you told me like you found yourself writing all of this stuff that was about God, that was about religion, and it just kept finding its way into your writing again and again and again. And so you wanted to explore that. That's why you went to seminary, was just to kind of explore religious ideas, right?
And here I am.
All these years later as a minister.
Yeah, so we both loved this quote. We wanted to share it with you all because I love this idea of our spiritual life not being separate from our professional life or our personal life or what she calls our feeling life, but having it all be integrated into just who we are and sort of how we think, how we feel, how we move in the world, the things we talk about, that all of those come through our religious lens because it's so integrated into all the different aspects of who we have become as adults.
Absolutely. And there's this phrase that's often used in the United Church of Christ that you don't have to check your brain at the door. So if you are a scientist, for example, you don't have to check that scientific method at the door, that you can bring your professional life as a scientist into the church. And your spirituality doesn't have to be a separate component from that, but you can be the same person, an integrated person. And I love this idea of our feeling life too, doesn't have to be separate, that whatever we're feeling, all of our emotions, all of our doubts, all of our fears, that can be brought into church. It can be brought into worship. It can be part of our whole self. And so we're always, hopefully, in a worship context as our whole self, that there's not something that we have to be embarrassed about or hide or check at the door or keep separate. It's all our one self. And I just love attempting to be an integrated person. That's easier said than done. But being a full person means acknowledging that all of these different components or aspects of us make up who we are.
Yeah, I like that. And I think, on June 30th, which is not this Sunday, but next Sunday, we're going to be celebrating Open and Affirming Sunday, which is historically when our church celebrates this vote that we took 30 years ago to become an official Open and Affirming church. And we have a lot to say about that, which we'll say later. But the idea of open and affirming, we particularly celebrate our church's stance on LGBTQIA plus issues, but it's also a reminder that there are so many different ways that our church welcomes and embraces diversity and differences and people of all abilities and walks of life. We're hoping that Jacob's brother Noah, who will be in town, will share with us some of his deaf poetry or something in ASL as a way to remind people that there's so many different ways to worship. And I just think it's so great when we're able to celebrate in our congregation all of the ways that we are different and that we bring all of those differences together to worship God as one body of faith.
Absolutely.
We don't check them at the door. We don't have to all pretend like we're the same or that we think the same or that we worship the same or that, we have the same experiences, because we don't. And I think that's by divine design. And I think that's part of what makes us so beautiful and a diverse congregation.
Oh my gosh, this camera has been all over the place. I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
we don't have our tripod.
Have a tripod tonight, so it's...
My thumb was weakening. But no, I like this idea of whoever we are, our different identities, our different intersectionalities. That's a really important term to understand and talk about. That our identities are multi-layered, but all of those different layers, all those different aspects of our identity make up our whole self. And so all of those intersectionalities, all of those identities don't have to be ignored, that they can be part of worship, that they're an integral part of the diversity of our worship. Yeah. So we hope you bring your whole self to worship on Sunday.
Yes, every Sunday.
And every Sunday. And we can't wait to worship with you soon.
We'll see you
See you
soon.
then.